Afternoon. To welcome you all to the UCLA Library. I'm Gary Strong, I'm the University Librarian, and I'm particularly pleased that we are having this program today. It's going to be a delight and a rare opportunity to hear Ivan J. Houston discuss his recent book, Black Warriors, the Buffalo Soldiers of World War II. Black Warriors is based on Mr. Houston's experiences in World War II, the first all-black combat infantry regiment, the 370th of the segregated 92nd Infantry Division, what a mouthful, also known as the Buffalo Soldiers, which is a lot easier, on which Spike Lee's film Miracle at St. Anna was based. Before we begin, there are a few people I'd like to have stand and be acknowledged. Dr. Charles Alexander, the UCLA Associate Vice Provost for Student Diversity. Welcome. Lastly, from the Los Angeles chapter of the Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry, are these war veterans. Trooper Bruce Dennis from World War II, please stand. Come on. Trooper James Cooper, World War II. Trooper Andrew Aaron, Korea. Trooper Dr. Robert Mason, Vietnam. And Trooper Pompey Fixico, Seminole Negro Indian Scout descendant. We are honored to have you here with us tonight, and we remember, and I hope we remember all of those who aren't with us that are out defending our freedom. We're honored to have Mr. Houston here tonight, as I said, as our Winter Library Associates author reading. Mr. Houston is the great-grandson of former slaves and free African Americans, a Los Angeles native and a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley, for which I forgave him earlier. His family co-founded Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Company, one of the largest historically black-owned companies in the country. And his paternal grandfather, William Lloyd Garrison Jackson, was one of the first African Americans to register to vote in California in 1870. As a quick aside, Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Company donated their archives to the UCLA Library in 1986. And those compose now a part of our growing Collecting Los Angeles collections. Mr. Houston added to his family's pioneering legacy through his assignment in the Army's first all-black combat infantry unit, also known as the Buffalo Soldiers, that led to his receipt of the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge, and 3 battle stars. An impressive individual, Houston went on to have a successful business career as president and CEO of Golden State Mutual Insurance Life Insurance Company. He was named one of Harvard Business School's American Business Leaders of the 20th Century, included in UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business Hall of Fame, and listed in Ebony Magazine's 100 Most Influential Black Americans list for 14 consecutive years, from 1976 to 1990. Mr. Houston's family was also profiled in the New York Times bestseller, Our Kind of People by Lawrence Otis Graham. His reading tonight will focus on his personal journey as a soldier and the odyssey of his 3rd Battalion Combat Team 370 with 4,000 men in Italy. But their mission was to break through the Nazis' infamous 170-mile Gothic line and defeat the Germans. After 9 months of fighting, Mr. Houston and his team were successful in defeating the Germans and breaking through that line. But I'll let him tell you more about that, and I hope you'll be willing to answer a question or two when everything is finished this evening. He's truly a remarkable man, and I hope you will be inspired by his story. As after he speaks, we are asking you to join us for a reception, and there will also be copies of Black Warriors for you to purchase and for him to personally inscribe to you. So it is my pleasure. Please join me in welcoming Ivan J. Houston to the UCLA Library. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you very much, Gary Strong. This is a real pleasure being here and being able to talk about the Black warriors, the Buffalo Soldiers of World War II. I see a lot of people that I've never met before here in the audience. I see some of the old Buffalo soldiers here, and thank you so very much. You started our legacy, and thank you for coming out to share this moment with a World War II Buffalo soldier. And I see a lot of friends that I have known for quite a long time, and I'm just very pleased that all of you came out to listen to this old Buffalo soldier talk about what happened to him during World War II. Now, it's true, I am a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley. But I have a lot of ties to UCLA. Number one, certainly my daughter Pam, who's sitting right back there, she graduated from UCLA. It was only 65 years ago on this campus at Royce Hall that I met my wife, and Philippa. And Philippa introduced me in 1948, after we had married, to Jackie Robinson at a baseball game in Chicago. He came over, he was playing with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He came, he saw her in the stands. We were sitting very close to first base. He came over and she introduced me to him. So, you know, that's, I know Jackie is, you know, Mr. UCLA also. Also, the very day that I met my wife Philippa here, back in June 1944, I also met Sam Gravely. I don't know whether you know about him. He was here in the Navy's V-12 program. Sam became the first black naval admiral, the first black to command a fleet. I met him here the very day that I met my wife. Yet I don't know too many people that know that Sam was here in a naval program in June of 1944. Also, and I was telling this to somebody, I did take 2 courses at UCLA before I during the summer of 1946, after I came home. I took Accounting 1B and Econ 1B. So I have ties to UCLA. I just wanted you to know that. The question is, you know, maybe though, why did I write this book? It's some 65 years ago, in August 23rd, 1944, that my unit, my regiment, my combat team entered battle in Italy at the Arno River, which flows between Pisa and its leaning tower and the Renaissance city of Florence. I was a private, then I was a PFC, then I was a corporal during much of the fighting. I was not an officer, but I was involved in maintaining the battalion journal, me and a few other guys. And we maintained this journal, which was an hour by hour, day by day. It actually ran up to almost 400 pages during the time that we were in battle. And it documented everything, but in military jargon. This journal, I was able to rescue when I got out of the Army. I shouldn't really have it. There is a, thank you. I should not have this journal. We wrote it every day, every call that came in, every messenger that came to battalion headquarters, we jotted down what happened. You know, sometimes they would call in them and they would say, all secure. And we would jot everything down. Some of it was very drab, some of it got pretty exciting. But this is what one of the things that I did when I was in the Army. And this journal I got home through means of an officer, and I made copies of it. He had copies. Harry Cox was his name. He lived in San Francisco, just passed away last year. And it added up to about 400 pages. And it was gathering dust in my closet. And then I said about 3 or 4 years ago, I said, I've got to do something about this. And so I began to type, one of the best things I ever learned in the 8th grade, typing. And I began to use my computer, one of the greatest inventions that ever came along, and I began to put in order this book. But after I got it down, I knew that I needed help. And because I was not used to writing the way that it might be interesting to somebody to really read and get into. So I met a retired USC English professor, Gordon Cohn, and he and I worked together for a couple of years until we finally got it down and ready to publish. And there, too, is another tie to UCLA, because I didn't know anything about publishing, but I knew nothing. But I saw in the paper, the LA Times, that the LA Times at UCLA had a book fair. So I came out to the book fair and talked to publishers. And I found out a little bit more. They directed me to the Book Publishers of America, and I talked to them. And so finally, I submitted my manuscript to 2 or 3 places. Takes forever. Finally, you know, they came back, said, we really like this, but, you know, you got to do this or you got to do this. I said, you know, I was 84 years old. Now I'm 84 now, 83 then. I said, I can't wait forever for this yeah, I said, you know, I got to do something. I think I should make a move now. So anyway, I went to a publisher, iUniverse, self-publishing, but very good. And we went through the whole process. And now the book is in some 300 retail outlets, Barnes & Noble, Borders. It's online. It's even in one of those electronic books, Kindle. Yeah, I've got yeah. So anyway, the book is this is the process that I went through. But what is it all about? Because World War II was quite different than the world is now. We were, as indicated in the book, we were Negroes. We were, at that time, second-class citizens in this country. Yet we were called up to go to battle, to go into combat, to fight for this country. And that is one of the reasons why I decided to document things. I was born in Los Angeles, and I knew that there was discrimination and segregation, but I didn't know it was anything like what those guys in the Deep South were experiencing. I didn't know, you know, I was only on a train going from Los Angeles to Fort Benning, Georgia, when I hit El Paso, Texas, that when my friend and I were 2 of us together with 30 other soldiers, all of them were white, that they began to put the curtain around our table as we were in the dining room. It was only in El Paso, Texas, that I saw the restrooms which said, you know, colored only, drinking fountains. This is where we begin to, I begin to see a difference. Here in Los Angeles, yes, we had discrimination in jobs, but we still didn't have discrimination in schools. You could almost go to any school that you wanted to. You couldn't exactly eat anywhere you wanted to. We would always go to a Chinese restaurant or an Italian restaurant, but not, you know, other places wouldn't serve us. So anyway, the Army was a real change for me. Went across the U.S. to Fort Benning, Georgia, as part of the Army Specialized Training Corps. And we were all, the guys in that were all college men, or we had all passed the test at a certain level. And we were supposed to get infantry basic training and then be sent back to college to study to be engineering officers. Well, it was 1944, and the Army began to lose a lot of infantry people in North Africa and Sicily and Italy. So they took all of us who were in the ASTP, the Army Specialized Training Corps, whites, blacks, and everybody else in there, and sent us all to the infantry. That's how I ended up in the 92nd Infantry Division. And in the 92nd was stationed in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. They formed a combat team out of some of us called the 370th Infantry Regiment, and we left for combat in Italy. My unit, it fought along other U.S. troops, including Japanese Americans, soldiers from Great Britain, Brazil, South Africa, and India. Ours was the only Negro division to fight as a unit in Europe during World War II. Our encounters with German forces in Italy over 8 months began at the Arno River near little-known Cinaia and proceeded north through Pisa, Lucca, Seravezza, the Apennine Mountains, Genoa, and the Po Valley. We went, this is the map of Italy, and it shows where we landed in Naples in July 1944. At the end of July, we took another ship from Naples to Civitavecchia, and then we were trucked from Civitavecchia up to the Arno River line. 1 week later, we crossed the Arno River line and began to go north toward the famed Gothic line that the Germans had built almost over the past year. The crossing of the Arno River and the invasion of the northern part of Italy by our division was a spectacular event because it just showed what people felt when they are freed. Because at a hamlet just north of the Arno, the citizens greeted us with cries of "Viva Americani," "Buongiorno," and other phrases that were beyond our limited vocabulary. Others just waved happily. Some of the women could be seen crying. The excited civilians clung to our vehicles and showered the soldiers with grapes, flowers, and fruit. Some ran along pouring wine for all who would accept it, while others of both sexes and all ages paid their tribute with hearty kisses. They had every guy in the column feeling like a conquering hero. Even today, I smile and feel good when I recall these scenes. Here were white Italians greeting Negro Americans as liberators and showering us with love, while in our own country, we remained second class in all respects. This is the feeling we got as we moved across the Arno River into those small villages in northern Italy, in Tuscany, actually. When I didn't realize it at the time, but our division, our unit, actually fought in Tuscany, Italy, which is one of the most famous places in the world. Pisa, Lucca, Florence, this is where we were. And it was really pretty well destroyed. The Germans did a lot of destruction, and I guess we did the rest of it. But that was war. We did not have to dig trenches in Tuscany. We stayed in houses and in villas. And the Germans would shell the villas, and we would shell the villas. So in the end, a lot of the villas turned into rubble. But that's just the way World War II was in Italy. I think some of the people there are still somewhat upset at the destruction that was, that happened throughout Italy, from the whole length of the boot. Tremendous destruction. Famous places like Monte Cassino. And, but nevertheless, those of us who were there, this was our job, to capture, to move ahead, to get rid of the enemy. And we did it to the best that we could. Now, we had a number of casualties, and there's one thing about our casualties which was a little different. Because we were segregated, our senior officers were all white. Almost all of the junior officers were Negroes. But the rule was in the division and throughout the whole entire army that no Negro would ever command a white person, no matter what happened. Even if, this was the rule, and it was in effect. So it made certain that we did not always have the best person in charge. In fact, usually you didn't have the best person in charge. But that's the way, we fought World War II. Most of the lieutenants were, second lieutenants and first lieutenants were black, probably out of college. Many of them were killed in action as we moved north. One company, I Company, commanded by Captain Jesse Jarman of Indiana, lost all of their officers. In one account of battle, we were trying to capture a hill, a mountain really, Mount Kaula. Mount Kaula dominated a plain and was the strong point that the Germans were holding against us as we moved north. I volunteered to carry ammunition to the top of Mount Kaula. And I'll just read you this because it does indicate something that we had to go through. I volunteered for the ammunition supply detail with about a dozen men. I carried a metal box of ammunition in each hand. The boxes were rectangular and weighed about 25 pounds each. I loosened the sling of my M1 rifle and slung it over my back. The first time I saw the Germans close up and shooting at us was at Saravezza, that's at the foot of Mount Kaula. As we approached the hill, we looked up and I could see a German machine gun raking our position. There were 2 German soldiers manning the gun, and our fire hit one. The other carried him away, and we continued toward our goal. When we reached the base of the hill, the Germans unleashed a tremendous artillery barrage. We crouched for a time and then continued on our way. Halfway up the hill, we encountered more machine gun fire and mortars. Shrapnel was flying all around, and some of it, quite hot, landed on my clothes, burning to the skin. Some of our detail were hit, and we could not continue, and we had to return to the base of the hill. These were some of the kinds of things that we faced as we moved through Italy. Several of when I was coming over on the boat, there were 5 of us who played cards. Myself, a guy named Jim Tucker, Max Scott, George Gray, John Reed. 3 of the guys were killed within 4 months. Myself, thank goodness I survived. The other guy who survived, Jim Tucker, we were all private PFCs at this time, he became a senior vice president of the Federal Reserve branch in Richmond, Virginia. And I've been in communication with him in the last few months. But we lost friends, and we still were criticized by the higher-ups in the Army because sometimes we were not as aggressive as they thought we should have been. We never did have what I would call replacements. The way the Army was structured, when we lost key officers, key enlisted men, key non-commissioned officers, they were not replaced or replaced by people who did not have the training or the leadership experience. And beside that, most of the guys that I was with, the enlisted men, were from the Deep South. They had been segregated all of their lives, and they just thought that they were being sent on suicide missions. So we had a lot of criticism because sometimes the Army official term was this: oh, these guys were attacking, but they just melted away. Well, these guys from the Deep South used another term. They said, no, we didn't, sir. We just unassed the hill. So that was, that was the jargon that they used, and that we all used it because, whereas I was educated. I came out of UC Berkeley and I had 3 semesters before I went into the 92nd Infantry Division. Most of the guys were from the Deep South, either illiterate or not very well educated. And I taught different than they did. And thank goodness I took boxing when I was at Cal. Because the only 2 fights that I ever had were with these guys. They wanted to challenge me. Because, oh, you're different, you're whatever. And, I fought. One fight was down here at San Pedro as soon as I got in the Army. And, the guy picked on me, and they put the gloves. The Army always had gloves somewhere. I don't know where they came from. And I trotted out the gloves, and we fought, and I beat the guy up because I knew how to box. Joe Louis was one of my idols. The other one was in Italy. We had been in combat from August until March, and we were making major changes. And I'm a corporal, but I'm still talking to the officers and that. And I think they resented the guy, big sergeant in one of the companies, resented that. And so he challenged me to a fight. Now, we were in combat. We were just a little bit behind the line. Somebody brought out the gloves. I don't know where the gloves came from, but anyway, we fought, and I beat him too. So, and once again, the two great things that I took in school, typing in the 8th grade and boxing as a freshman in Cal. It saved my life, I think. Well, it was, in the end, we broke through the Gothic line. That's a line of fortification that the Germans had built. I put it in red up here on this map. Across Italy, on one of the times where I got wounded, it was on April the 9th, 1945, because I moved up with other two battalion headquarters across a canal, an area called the Cinquale Canal. And as we approached the villa where we were going to stay, we saw fresh vehicle tracks, and inside we found food still on the table. The Germans had apparently left only minutes beforehand. As I was standing in the doorway, sort of facing inward, a loud explosion blew me about 10 feet inside the building. Yeah, the explosion continued all around. I was on the floor, and I felt my entire back stinging. And I slowly examined myself, because all my arms and legs were still in place. But I discovered that a small piece of shrapnel had entered my right shoulder. The battalion medical staff was close by, so I took myself to the medical officer, Captain Young. He took off my combat jacket, shirt, undershirt, gave me a shot of tetanus, poured sulfa drugs over my wound after removing the shrapnel. Then he wrapped me up and told me to get back to combat. So, yeah, because there were other people who were way more seriously hurt than I was. It was, for a guy who was 19 years old, a tremendous experience. I never would volunteer for this kind of experience, though. I think that would be a little crazy. But the fact that I survived it is certainly, I'm very happy about that. One final thing that I would just like to cover was the fact that we did in June the 5th, 1945, the war in Italy had ended. It ended officially May 2nd, 1945, in Italy. It ended in Europe, I think it was May 7th. That's, in fact, our journal says, and I recorded this personally in the journal, May 7th, this was 1945, at 16:30 hours, 4:30 p.m., I noted in the journal, the war in Europe is over. We received that word, and true to our, we recorded everything that we received. Incidentally, when the war ended in Italy on May the 2nd, 1945, almost a week earlier, it was a wild celebration. We had occupied a small town, Tremoli, in the very northern part of Tuscany. And the Italians, went crazy. They were shooting all over the place, drinking wine. We were right on a headquarters overlooking a piazza. They wanted our colonel to come out and, greet him, because he was the highest ranking person in this city. And he was very reluctant to do that because he thought he might get shot. Colonel Doggett was a real deep Southerner. He was from anyway. But he finally went out. They gave him a wonderful cheer, didn't shoot him or anything, and he went back in. But the other thing which we're quite proud of is the fact that on June 6, 1945, No, it was not June 6th. It was actually earlier. On the men of the 370th Regimental Combat Team had the honor of escorting the ashes of Christopher Columbus back to Genoa from where they had been hidden by the partisans during the war. The men of Company H of the 370th Infantry Regiment accompanied the ornamental urn which rested on a horse-drawn carriage into the Piazza della Vittoria, largest square in Genoa. Commanded by Captain Harold Montgomery, the men of Company H, one of the regiment's heavy weapons companies, walked at a funeral cadence in a manner that I have seen only Negro troops perform. It was a very, very solemn ceremony. Now, some of you may say, wait a minute, I think I saw Columbus's ashes in Seville or in, the Dominican Republic. Yeah, I later learned that no one is really certain whether or not those were truly Columbus ashes. His remains have been variously reported to be in Seville, Spain, Havana, Cuba, and in the Dominican Republic. However, the ceremony certainly was stirring, and it was and it was quite an honor to those of us who had fought for such a long time under a great cloud of alleged incompetence. So that, it just sums up an experience that I had when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. An experience that I'm very happy to have had, an experience that I'm very pleased to have been able to document and get it to you if you wish to read it. My wife says, well, she really likes the cover of the book. She likes the cover. She says if they don't buy the book to read it, they can use it on their coffee table. Thank you so very much. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Let me see. What we're seeing here is there is a military cemetery in Florence, Italy, just 7 miles south of Florence. I was telling someone, and there are about little over 4,000 graves, and there are about 400 Buffalo soldiers buried in that cemetery. Still left there. A lot of people were, a lot of those who were killed in action were returned to the state. But there are still almost 400 there in this cemetery. It's a beautiful cemetery. In the back of the cemetery, very few people go to that cemetery. And even when you go there, if you just look at it from the entrance, you'll see a lot of crosses and so forth, but you will miss what is most spectacular. In the very back of the cemetery, there's a huge mural showing all the fighting in Italy, in northern Italy. And it's in mosaic tile and marble, the only way that the Italians could do it. And beside that, there's a huge buffalo. All of the insignias of the army of those of us who fought in northern Italy are there. And it doesn't do it justice there. Over there, there's a picture over there where it's in gold and black mosaic tile. I'm pointing to it in that picture. And it's beautiful. And it's with our division, the 1st Armored Division, which is the same 1st Armored Division that's been fighting in the Desert Wars. That division was when we first went online in August 1944, we replaced the 1st Armored Division in line on the Arno River. And their insignia is there too. But it's a beautiful place. If you're ever in Florence, Italy, if you can persuade, but it costs you a mint to get one of those taxi drivers to get you 7 miles, down to the U.S. military cemetery there. And it's a very beautiful spot, and it's the only place in the world where I've ever seen the buffalo insignia so presented. There are other things that over there on the I've discovered when I was doing the book Google. I'm a little older. Google, here's Google, but with Google, I was able to actually go to the front line. I was actually able to see where we fought. It's just amazing to me to be able to zoom in like you're in a helicopter, and that's one place that's Segretated, where we had everything, where we were almost blown up. That's Hill X, where we lost 24 men. But you can do that with Google. Then the other map is over there. Well, there's the map of my of the medals that I have. That's over there. So anyway, now are there any questions that anyone might want to ask me? Yeah, I have several. This gentleman first.
When the company was formed at Fort Huachuca, were the company grade officers black or white?
By company grade, you mean the captain?
Captain and below, yes.
The captain and below were, in our battalion, we had 2 white captains, 3 black captains. All of the lieutenants under the black captains were black. The lieutenants under the white captains were black and white. So it was, the order that no black captain would command a white officer. That still prevailed, but that was the way it was.
And were blacks being accepted in OCS at that
Yes, blacks were. It's interesting. OCS, I think, was about integrated in most places, infantry, as I understand it. The ASTP, the program that I went into the Army into, was integrated. We had the whole company was about 6 blacks, and we were all in the same squad. But we all, initially they wouldn't let us, we had a table that we were supposed to eat at, but we complained, and then we could eat anywhere we wanted to. But that was the way the Army was. Yes, sir?
Where does the term buffalo soldiers come from, and what does it encompass?
Okay, good question. And
just African American?
No, well, buffalo soldiers, and these gentlemen here know that too. This came, after the Civil War. Black troops that fought in this, and there were almost 200,000 black troops that fought in the Civil War, about 180 some odd thousand. Many of them were sent west to fight the Indian Wars. The Indians, there are 2 reasons. The Indians thought they were brave, sort of like the buffalo was. Their hair was like the buffalo's hair. Sometimes they wore, because it was very cold on the plains, and they would sometimes skin the buffalo and use the buffalo hide as a coat. So they would use, they had the buffalo. So all of these things added up to the fact that, they were called buffalo soldiers.
So that term is
carried
over since?
It was carried over. There was a buffalo division, the same division I was in, the 92nd, in World War I. My father was an artillery officer in World War I in the 92nd Division and fought in France. And they used the buffalo insignia. One of the things that I wanted to portray to everyone was the fact that there were buffalo soldiers in World War II, and we were them.
Am I correct that Truman ended segregation?
Yes.
And so for Korea, there were no...
Initially in Korea, There was segregation, yes, but Truman ended it, and you know, it wasn't, and nothing happens overnight, but nevertheless he started the process, and the Army, operating under his orders, did begin their process of integration, and has, I think, at one time done a better job than certainly civilian life in the integration.
Tell us about the Bronze Star Island.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, see, I got this when I went up. Was trying to get ammunition on on top of that mountain, Mount Kaula, and we had it was a terrible job. We lost 75 people in one day, very quickly, going up that mountain, and it was. But a few days afterward, we were lined up for an inspection, and the General Allman came by, and he stopped in front of me. General Allman was our commanding general, and he is not have a good reputation among African Americans. In fact, he said that he would, he just didn't want to, he would not drink coffee with us. He didn't think that we had the right kind of guts to fight. And all this I never knew about until after the war. And, but he nevertheless was quite a soldier when it came to training people. And he stopped in front of me, and they talked to the colonel and the captain, and he said, they gave me the combat infantryman's badge, which is for exemplary conduct in action against the enemy. And actually, based upon getting this, that's how I got the Bronze Star. The Bronze Star, later, I got that for the same reason that I got the combat infantryman badge. Yes?
Were you near the 442?
The 442nd, yes, thank you. The 442nd, Japanese Americans, when we first went in line, we were right adjacent to the 100th Battalion, which was, they were there before the 442nd Infantry Regiment. The 100th Battalion fought with us in the early part of the time we were in Italy in September 1944. At the last battles that we were in April 1945, the 442nd came back from France, where they had been fighting, and they fought alongside of us, and they were tremendous in their accomplishments in World War II, both in France and in Italy. The two historic buffalo troops, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, were sent overseas, and they were actually changed. In North Africa, they became service troops. They were disbanded. The Army they were no longer considered cavalry. They were service troops, and as he said, what they did, these guys laid pontoon bridges, over the Arno River, because the Germans blew every bridge over the Arno River except the Ponte Vecchio, the bridge, the old bridge, the Gold Bridge in Florence. Yeah. Yes. Well, way back, and then I'll get you. Way back, yes.
I'm just curious to know, when you got into fisticuffs, were you disciplined, and did that affect your standing as an officer?
No, it wasn't. I think apparently, when two soldiers seemed to have something, against the, everybody, this is official almost, semi-official. Oh, well, you guys got to fight it out. I mean, the captain, the officers, everybody was standing around looking at it. And so you fought it out. Yeah, at least that's the way it was where I was. Yeah. Okay.
Please join me in thanking